I'm Nick Wood. I'm a freelance photographer. I also run Unshaken Photography Training. Today I'd like to share with you some great tips and advice on how to produce some stunning photographs. We're now going to talk about taking wedding photographs. Wedding photographers these days are actually under a little bit of pressure to take both formal and informal style of photographs. This is what brides tend to want these days. Taking wedding photographs isn't an easy job. You tend to be shooting in a range of locations. Shooting at the church presents its own challenges. If you're responsible for all the photographs on the day, first things first, have a word with the priest or the vicar or whoever's in charge and ask what you can and what you can't do, and also where you can stand. Be prepared, you may not actually be allowed to take any photographs inside the church. At the most, you may be able to take a few photographs from a certain location, but certainly without using your flash. It's well worth preparing beforehand, having a little trial run inside a church to see if you can take those sorts of shots. My other tip for shooting around the church is to ask the bride beforehand whether or not she minds if there's any gravestones appearing in the pictures. Many brides don't like gravestones appearing in their pictures. They think it distracts somewhat and can add a little morbid note. For other brides, they just don't mind and feel that it adds to the overall feelings and the location shots on the day. It's always worth asking that question. You may want to also take some of the group shots outside the church. We can't always forecast what the weather's going to be, so it's always quite a nice idea to get a couple of the essential group shots done at the church. I wouldn't overdo it, and the chances are you're going to take the best group shots at the final locations in some nice gardens. Having a couple in the bank is always a nice position to be though. The final venue. Once you get to the final venue, if you hadn't had a chance before to run around, you may want to do that straight away. Have a good look around at the best locations to get some group shots. The chances are the best locations will be those where there's a nice even light. You don't want anyone staring into direct sunlight. At the same time, we don't want anybody stood around in some dark, dingy shade. Normally, I would always try to avoid direct sunlight. We don't want anyone squinting. And also, you may find that your digital camera is going to struggle if you're stood under direct sunlight when the bride, dressed in white, is stood next to the groom, whose chances are is stood in a dark suit. You're probably going to start to lose some detail, unfortunately. Digital cameras tend to struggle in those conditions. So a little bit of overhead shade works very nicely. At the venue, you also want to run around and try and get lots of little informal group shots. It's a great location for getting those more relaxed informal shots. The ceremony has already happened at this point and everyone is just a little bit more relaxed and in good humour. If you've been asked to undertake the formal group shots, which is quite an ask, you actually want to have done your preparation beforehand. I would suggest that when you get asked, state to the bride that you'd really like a list of those shots that she would like taken, and ask the bride and the groom to both nominate a member of their family who will be responsible for collating the groups. As a wedding photographer, I probably don't have much of an idea who Aunt Bessie is or Uncle Joe, and if I'm running around on the day, it can just be a little bit of a crazy situation. So I always get the bride and groom to nominate a family member each. That's important, it's a family member each, to get the groups together. That way the process can run smoothly. Also at the venue, jump indoors nice and early, get some nice little detail shots of the cake, the favours, the table settings. You may also want to actually do an informal cake cutting of the bride and groom. It's a relaxed one, it's not the real one, but it's just a little mock-up. Once you've got that safely taken, you can then take a lovely wide open shot later on in the day of everybody else taking the cutting of the cake shot. And that's a real special moment for the bride and groom. During the course of the day, remember to get together a collection of both the informal and formal shots that are really going to piece together the story of the day. I've got a selection here. You can capture the bride and groom just walking together, capturing those more intimate moments. Always works very nicely. These are often the shots that they enjoy the most. You'll find that when the bride and groom are stood in front of numerous cameras for the whole day, the smiles can start to become a little bit false and fake and doesn't always work too well. So keep your eye on them, see if they just slope off for a little private moment and try and capture that. Again, you don't need to be looking to be at the front of taking all of the group shots as well. Very often you can capture other people taking photographs themselves. As the wine flows, the results may be mixed and you can capture some great emotions. Although the bride and groom are now a couple, you can also capture shots of them on their own. This tends to work very well. And in fact, I find it's a growing trend that the bride likes to have a number of shots of herself in various different poses during the day. The groom, on the other hand, you might find is a little bit more reluctant to do too many poses. Very often I'd actually try and get the groom to be hanging around with his best men and his ushers, and you can get some nice group shots. The sort of reservoir dog shot that you may have seen for it yourselves. You may want to be capturing just the little details and moments and other members that are at the party, whether or not it's the children, or whether or not it's the bride and groom enjoying the late night partying with their family and friends. Very often it's these little details that really help to bring together the story of the day. In summary, as a wedding photographer, you want to be telling the story of the day. There's a number of key shots you need to get, but at the same time, keep your eye out for those little intimate shots that can really bring to life and tell the story of the day. In fact, the bride and groom would really appreciate this. The day runs very fast for them and they often miss out on those intimate little moments. And that is how we take great wedding photographs.